The stagecoach rattled into Dillon, Montana on a blistering afternoon in July of 1882. Carrying one passenger who had traveled 1,500 miles with nothing but a battered trunk and a heart full of equal parts hope and terror. Lila Anderson pressed her gloved hand against the window, watching the dusty Main Street materialize through the grime, her lips moving silently as she practiced the words she would need to say when she finally met the man who had sent for her. The advertisement had been simple enough, placed in the Boston newspaper by a rancher seeking a wife who could cook, manage a household, and adapt to the rugged Montana territory. Lila had penned her response 3 times before sending it, each version carefully worded to present herself honestly while omitting the one detail that had shaped every moment of her 22 years. She had not mentioned her stutter, that cruel impediment that turned simple sentences into battlegrounds and made her the object of ridicule back in Massachusetts. Her mother had assured her it would improve with age, but 2 decades had proven that optimism unfounded. The stage driver called out their arrival, and Lila's stomach clenched with familiar anxiety. She smoothed her dark blue traveling dress, tucking a strand of honey-colored hair back into her modest bonnet. Through the window, she could see a handful of people milling about the street, cowboys in dusty chaps, women with parasols, a shopkeeper sweeping his porch. Somewhere among them was Samuel Greene, the man whose letters had been kind and thoughtful, describing his ranch in the foothills, and his hope for a partnership built on mutual respect rather than mere convenience. The driver opened the door and offered his hand. Lila descended carefully, her legs unsteady after days of travel. The mountain air was thinner here, cleaner than the coal-smoked atmosphere of Boston, and the sky stretched endlessly overhead in a brilliant expanse of blue. She had never seen so much open space, and for a moment, the sheer vastness of it stole her breath. "Miss Anderson." The voice came from her left, deep and measured. Lila turned to find a man stepping forward from the shade of the general store's awning. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that spoke of years of physical labor. His face was weathered by sun and wind, strong-featured beneath the brim of a worn Stetson. But it was his eyes that caught her attention, a striking shade of gray-blue that regarded her with genuine warmth rather than the impatience or dismissal she had grown accustomed to. "Why, yes," she managed, hating the way the word caught in her throat. "I am Lila Anderson." She watched his expression carefully, waiting for the familiar sequence: confusion, then understanding, then either pity or contempt. But Samuel Greene simply removed his hat, revealing dark brown hair touched with lighter streaks from the sun, and offered her a slight smile. "Welcome to Dillon, Miss Anderson. I hope the journey was not too difficult." He glanced at the stage driver who was hauling down her trunk. "I am Samuel Greene. We have been corresponding these past 2 months." "I can know who you are," Lila said, then winced at her own abruptness. She tried again. Thank you for meeting me." Samuel's expression did not change. He paid the driver, then lifted her trunk as though it weighed nothing and secured it to the back of a sturdy wagon waiting nearby. "I thought we might stop at the hotel first, let you rest and refresh yourself after your travels. We can have supper at the dining room there, get acquainted properly. The ranch is about an hour's ride north, and I did not want to rush you." Lila nodded gratefully. The thoughtfulness of the gesture eased some of her anxiety. She allowed him to help her into the wagon, noting the calluses on his hands and the careful way he ensured she was settled before releasing her arm. He moved around to the driver's side and took up the reins with practiced ease. As they rolled down the main street, Samuel pointed out various establishments. "That is Miller's Dry Goods, where we get most of our supplies. The post office is next door. Dr. Brennan has his practice in that building with the green shutters. The church is at the end of the street, Methodist, though we get a circuit preacher for other denominations monthly. Lila listened, grateful that he did not seem to require much response from her. She took in the sights of her new home. Wooden buildings weathered by mountain winters, hitching posts lined with horses, a saloon from which piano music drifted even in mid-afternoon. It was so different from Boston's brick and cobblestone streets, the constant press of humanity. Here, everything felt spread out, touched by wilderness even in the heart of town. "The hotel is just ahead," Samuel continued. "It is nothing fancy, but Mrs. Murphy keeps it clean and her cook makes the best apple pie in the territory. I have taken a room for you for tonight. Tomorrow, if you are feeling ready, we can head to the ranch, or we can wait another day if you need more time to adjust." "Tea tomorrow is fine," Lila said, forcing the words out. She took a breath, determined to say what she needed to despite the difficulty. "Mr. Greene, ISH should have told you in my L letters. I have a stutter. I have had it S since I was a CH child. If this changes your mind about the R arrangement, IW would understand." She held her breath, waiting. The wagon had stopped in front of a 2-story building with a painted sign declaring it the Mountain View Hotel. Samuel set the brake and turned to look at her fully. His gray-blue eyes were steady, thoughtful. "Take your time," he said simply. "We have got plenty of that." The words were so unexpected, so free of judgment that Lila felt a sudden tightness in her chest. She blinked rapidly, willing away the tears that threatened. In Boston, people had always rushed her, finished her sentences, or simply walked away in irritation. Her own father had often refused to wait for her to complete a thought, claiming it wasted his valuable time. "I do not require a wife who can talk quickly," Samuel continued, his tone matter of fact. "I require a wife who is honest, capable, and willing to build a life out here. From your letters, you seem to possess those qualities. A stutter does not change that." Lila found herself smiling despite her nervousness. Thank you." Samuel climbed down and came around to help her from the wagon. "Let me show you to your room. You can rest, maybe have a bath if you would like. I will come back around 6 for supper if that suits you." Mrs. Murphy proved to be a plump, cheerful woman in her 50s who fussed over Lila like a mother hen, insisting on sending up a bath immediately and offering to press her dress for supper. Lila's room was simple but comfortable, with a brass bed covered in a colorful quilt, a washstand, and a window overlooking the street. She could see the mountains in the distance, their peaks still touched with snow despite the summer heat. The bath was a luxury after days of travel, and Lila soaked until the water cooled, washing away the grime and some of her anxiety. She thought about Samuel's reaction, or rather, his lack of reaction. He had not made her feel deficient or burdensome. "Take your time," he had said, as though it were the most natural thing in the world to wait for her words. She dressed carefully for supper, choosing her best dress, a modest gown of deep green cotton with ivory lace at the collar and cuffs. It had been her mother's last gift before Lila left Boston, sewn with loving hands and many tears. Her mother had not wanted her to go west, had feared for her safety and happiness, but Lila had been determined. There was nothing for her in Boston but more years of loneliness and whispered mockery. At least here, she might have a chance at a real life, a partnership with someone who needed her skills rather than her conversational abilities. Samuel arrived promptly at 6, freshly cleaned and wearing what was obviously his best shirt, a dark blue cotton that brought out the color of his eyes. He offered his arm and they walked to the hotel's dining room, a pleasant space with checkered tablecloths and oil lamps already lit against the approaching evening. Over roasted chicken and vegetables they talked, or rather, Samuel talked and Lila listened, contributing when she could. He told her about his ranch, the Rocking G, which he had built up over the past 8 years from a hardscrabble homestead to a respectable operation running about 200 head of cattle. He had 2 hired hands, brothers named Tom and Jack Riley, who lived in the bunkhouse and helped with the daily work. "It is a good life," Samuel said, cutting his chicken with deliberate care, "but lonely. I lost my parents to fever 5 years back, and my sister married a man from Wyoming and moved away. The ranch takes up most of my time, but I have been thinking lately that I am building something with no one to share it with, no one to pass it on to." "Why you want children?" Lila asked. "Someday, if we are blessed with them," Samuel replied. "But mainly I want a partner, someone to work alongside. Ranch life is not easy, Miss Anderson. The winters can be brutal, and there are days when everything seems to go wrong at once. But there is satisfaction in it too, in building something that lasts, in working with the land and the animals. I hope you will find it suits you." "I think it will," Lila said. She took a sip of water, gathering her courage. "In Boston, I worked in my father's shop. He sold fabrics and notions. I learned to keep books, to manage inventory, and my mother taught me to cook and sew. I am not afraid of hard work." "That is good to know," Samuel said. He paused, then added gently, "If you do not mind my asking, why did you decide to come west? You seem like you had a good situation in Boston." Lila looked down at her plate, considering how much to reveal, but if they were to build a life together, honesty seemed the best foundation. "My father died last year. He left the shop to my brother who sold it. My mother went to live with my married sister. They wanted me to come too, but..." She struggled for a moment, then pushed through. "My brother's wife did not want me there. She said I embarrassed them in society. My Stutter, you see. It made things awkward." Samuel's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "That must have been difficult." "It was lonely," Lila admitted. "I thought perhaps out here where life is simpler could be useful, be part of something." "You can be both those things at the Rocking G," Samuel assured her. "And for what it is worth, your sister-in-law sounds like a fool." The blunt assessment surprised a laugh out of Lila, and Samuel's expression softened into a genuine smile. "There now, that is better. You have a nice laugh, Miss Anderson." They finished supper with easier conversation, and Samuel walked her back to her room as the Montana sky deepened to purple and stars began to emerge in impossible numbers. At her door, he paused, hat in his hands. "I know this is all rather sudden and strange," he said. "Meeting through letters, agreeing to marry without really knowing each other. But I want you to know that I will do my best to be a good husband, to give you a decent life. And if after a few days at the ranch you find it is not what you want, I will not hold you to our agreement. I will make sure you have safe passage back east or wherever you want to go." Lila met his eyes, seeing only sincerity there. "I do not think that will be necessary, Mr. Greene, but thank you for the choice." "Samuel," he corrected gently. "If we are to be married, you should call me Samuel. Then you should call me Lila." "Lila," he repeated, and something about the way he said her name, carefully and without rushing, made her heart flutter in an unfamiliar way. "I will see you in the morning then. Sleep well." She watched him walk down the hallway, his boots quiet on the wooden floor, before slipping into her room. Through the window, she could see the mountains silhouetted against the starlit sky, and for the first time since leaving Boston, she felt something very much like hope. The next morning dawned clear and bright. Samuel arrived after breakfast with the wagon restocked with supplies from the general store. Lila had changed into a more practical dress of brown calico, better suited for ranch life, and pinned her hair back in a simple bun. Mrs. Murphy had packed them a lunch and extracted a promise from Samuel to bring Lila back to town soon for a proper visit. The ride north took them through rolling grassland, dotted with cattle and occasional stands of cottonwood trees. The mountains drew closer, their presence both majestic and slightly intimidating. Samuel pointed out landmarks, a creek where they sometimes fished, a neighboring ranch owned by a family named Peterson, a meadow where wildflowers bloomed in spring. "The winters must be hard here," Lila observed, finding it easier to speak when she was not facing him directly. "They can be," Samuel admitted. "Last year we had snow from November through March, but the house is solid and we stock up well before the first freeze. The cattle are hardy breeds, bred for this climate. We lose a few each winter, but not many if we are vigilant." The rocking G came into view as they crested a gentle rise. The ranch house was a low, sprawling structure of logs and stone, with a covered porch running along the front. Smoke curled from the chimney despite the summer warmth, suggesting someone was cooking. Behind the house stood a large barn, a bunkhouse, several corrals, and various outbuildings. Cattle grazed in the near pasture, and Lila could see two men working with horses in one of the corrals. "It is beautiful," Lila said softly, and meant it. The ranch had a solid, permanent look to it, as though it had grown from the land itself rather than being imposed upon it. Samuel looked pleased. "I have put a lot of work into it. Still more to do, always more, but it is starting to feel like something that will last." He pulled the wagon up in front of the house, and the two men from the corral came over to help with the trunk. They were younger than Samuel, probably in their mid-20s, with the weathered look of men who spent their lives outdoors. Samuel made introductions. "Lila, these are the Riley brothers. Tom is the older one, Jack the younger. They have been working for me for 3 years now, and I trust them completely. Tom, Jack, this is Miss Lila Anderson, who has come from Boston to be my wife." Tom, the taller of the two with dark hair and a serious expression, touched his hat respectfully. "Pleased to meet you, madam." "Welcome to the rocking G," Jack, lighter-haired and quicker to smile, echoed the greeting. "It will be nice to have a lady around the place. Maybe the food will improve." "You are welcome to do your own cooking any time," Samuel said dryly, but there was affection in his tone. "Come on, Lila. Let me show you the house." The interior was rustic but well-maintained, with wooden floors and simple furniture that looked handmade and sturdy. The main room served as kitchen, dining area, and sitting room combined, with a large stone fireplace dominating one wall. Shelves held books and supplies, and curtains at the windows added a touch of softness to the masculine space. "There are 2 bedrooms," Samuel explained, pointing to doors on opposite sides of the room. "I have been using the one on the left. I thought you might want the one on the right for now. It has a better view of the mountains and more privacy." Lila understood what he was offering, time and space before making their arrangement permanent. She appreciated his consideration even as a small part of her wondered if it was her stutter that made him hesitant to rush into true intimacy. She pushed the thought aside, determined not to let old insecurities poison this new beginning. Thank you," she said. "That is thoughtful." He carried her trunk to the bedroom, which proved to be a pleasant space with a double bed, a wardrobe, a washstand with a china pitcher and bowl, and a window overlooking the northern pasture and the mountains beyond. Someone, probably Samuel, had placed a small vase of wildflowers on the windowsill. "I will let you settle in," Samuel said. "Take your time getting unpacked and acquainted with the house. I need to check on some things in the barn, but I will be back for lunch. If you need anything, just call. One of us will hear you." After he left, Lila sat on the edge of the bed, taking in her new surroundings. The mattress was filled with fresh straw and surprisingly comfortable. The quilt was a log cabin pattern in shades of blue and brown, likely made by Samuel's mother or sister. Everything was clean and well kept, speaking of a man who took care with his possessions and his home. She unpacked methodically, hanging her dresses in the wardrobe, arranging her few personal items on the washstand. She had brought her mother's Bible, a daguerreotype of her parents on their wedding day, and a small painted box that held her most precious letters and keepsakes. These she placed on the small table beside the bed, trying to make the space feel like her own. Once settled, she explored the rest of the house more thoroughly. The kitchen area was well equipped with cast iron pots and pans, a good supply of dishes, and a modern cookstove that looked well maintained. The pantry held basics: flour, sugar, salt, beans, rice, and various canned goods. There was a root cellar accessible through a trapdoor in the floor, and Samuel's bedroom door was closed, which she respected. She found herself drawn to the bookshelf, curious about what Samuel read. There were practical volumes on animal husbandry and agriculture, but also novels by Cooper and Hawthorne, a volume of Whitman's poetry, and several historical texts. It painted a picture of a man who valued learning despite the physical demands of his work. By noon, Lila had familiarized herself with the kitchen enough to prepare a simple meal from the supplies Samuel had brought. She made sandwiches from fresh bread, sliced ham and cheese, added some pickles from a jar in the pantry, and brewed coffee. She was setting the table when Samuel came in, accompanied by Tom and Jack. "Something smells good," Jack announced cheerfully. "Miss Anderson has made lunch," Samuel said. "I hope you do not mind, Lila. The boys usually eat with me." "Of course not," Lila said. "There is plenty." The meal was pleasant despite Lila's nervousness about speaking in front of the hired hands. But Tom and Jack were respectful and easy in their manner, treating her stutter as unremarkable. They talked about the ranch work, mentioning that they had been mending fence in the east pasture that morning and planned to check on the cattle near the creek in the afternoon. "We might have a bear problem," Tom said seriously. "Found some tracks near the upper grazing area yesterday." "Looked fresh." Samuel frowned. "We will need to keep a closer watch on the herd then. Maybe move them down closer to the house for a few days until we know what we are dealing with." After lunch, the men returned to their work and Lila cleaned up the dishes. Samuel lingered, clearly wanting to help but uncertain of his place in the kitchen. Finally, he picked up a dish towel and began drying the plates she washed. "You did not have to make lunch," he said. "I know you just arrived. You must be tired." "I wanted to help," Lila replied. "And I need to learn the K kitchen, the R routine of things." "Fair enough." Samuel set aside a dried plate. "This evening, I thought we might talk about the wedding. I spoke with Reverend Matthews before I left town yesterday. He can perform the ceremony anytime we are ready. I thought perhaps next Sunday, if that gives you enough time. But there is no rush if you want to wait longer, get more accustomed to the place and to me." Lila considered as she scrubbed a pot. A week seemed reasonable, enough time to adjust but not so long that the uncertainty would hang over them indefinitely. "And next Sunday sounds good." "All right then." Samuel smiled. "We can go into town Saturday, get whatever you need, file the paperwork. Mrs. Murphy is likely already planning to make a cake. What about your friends? Do you want to invite people? There are a few folks I would like to have there. The Petersons, our neighbors. Maybe Doc Brennan and his wife. Mrs. Murphy certainly. But I was thinking we would keep it small, simple. Unless you want something different, Lila shook her head. SM small is good. I do not know anyone H here yet. You will, Samuel assured her. This is a friendly community mostly. People look out for each other, especially during hard times. That evening, after supper, they sat on the porch watching the sun set behind the mountains. The sky turned brilliant shades of orange and pink, and the air cooled rapidly once the sun disappeared. Samuel had brought out 2 chairs and a blanket for Lila's shoulders, anticipating the chill. "Tell me about Boston," he said. "What was it like growing up there?" Lila gathered the blanket closer, thinking back. CR crowded, so many people all the tea time, and N noisy. Carriages and V vendors and church B bells. The ocean was N nice though. We would go to the H harbor sometimes, watch the SH ships come in. Do you miss it? She considered the question honestly. I miss my mother, my F friends from CH church, but the C city itself. No. I always felt like I was T trying to be SM smaller than I was, to T take up less SB space so people would not notice me as much. Samuel turned to look at her, his expression thoughtful in the fading light. You do not need to be smaller here, Lila. The land is big enough for all of us to be exactly who we are. The simple statement touched something deep inside her, and she found herself blinking back tears for the second time since meeting him. Thank you, Samuel. They sat in comfortable silence after that, watching the stars emerge one by one until the sky was ablaze with them. Lila had never seen so many stars, and Samuel pointed out constellations, telling her their names and the stories behind them. His voice was deep and soothing in the darkness, and Lila felt herself relaxing in a way she rarely had back east. The week passed quickly, filled with new routines and discoveries. Lila threw herself into learning the rhythms of ranch life. She woke early to make breakfast for Samuel and the Riley brothers, hearty meals of eggs, bacon, biscuits, and coffee to fuel their long days of physical labor. She learned where everything was kept, how Samuel liked his coffee, that Tom had a weakness for anything sweet, and Jack could eat enough for 2 men and never gain an ounce. Samuel was patient with her questions, showing her the garden plot behind the house where vegetables grew in neat rows, introducing her to the chickens in their coop, explaining the work that went into running a cattle ranch. He never rushed her when she spoke, never finished her sentences, or showed impatience with her stutter. Sometimes he would work alongside her, comfortable with silence but ready to talk when conversation flowed naturally. She discovered that he had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard, making her laugh at unexpected moments. She learned that he was fiercely protective of his land and animals, fair with his employees, and surprisingly well-read for a man who spent most of his time working cattle. He would sometimes quote poetry or reference books they had both read, delighting in their shared love of literature. Tom and Jack treated her with respectful friendliness, clearly pleased to have decent cooking and a woman's touch around the place. Jack especially was talkative, regaling her with stories of various ranch mishaps and close calls. Tom was quieter but no less kind, often anticipating what she might need and discreetly making sure it was available. On Wednesday, Samuel took her riding, setting her up on a gentle mare named Clover and teaching her the basics. Lila had never been on a horse before, and the first hour was terrifying, but Samuel stayed close, his calm presence and clear instructions giving her confidence. By the end of the afternoon, she could walk and trot without feeling like she would fall off, and Samuel pronounced her a natural. By next summer, you will be riding like you were born to it, he predicted. Thursday brought unexpected visitors. A wagon rolled up to the house mid-morning, carrying a family Samuel introduced as the Petersons. Eric Peterson was a big, bluff Norwegian with a booming laugh. His wife, Anna, a plump woman with kind eyes and excellent English despite her accent. They had brought their 3 children, 2 girls and a boy ranging from about 5 to 10 years old. "We heard Samuel was getting married and had to come meet the brave woman," Eric announced cheerfully. "Not many ladies willing to take on a stubborn rancher in Montana winters." Anna swatted his arm affectionately and turned to Lila. "Do not listen to him. Samuel is a good man, and we are very happy for you both. I brought some preserves and a cake to welcome you." Lila found herself swept into Anna's motherly embrace, then ushered inside to receive the gifts and accept an invitation to visit the Peterson Ranch anytime she needed company or advice. The children were shy at first, but warmed up when Lila offered them cookies she had baked that morning. "Are you really marrying Mr. Greene?" the oldest girl, whose name was Ingrid, asked with wide eyes. "Why, yes, on Sunday," Lila confirmed. "That is romantic," Ingrid sighed, and her younger sister giggled. The boy, Lars, was more practical. "Do you know how to shoot?" "You need to know how to shoot if you live out here, for bears and outlaws." Lars," Anna scolded, but Samuel laughed. "He is not wrong," Samuel said. "I was planning to teach Lila to handle a rifle soon. It is a good skill to have out here." The visit was brief, as the Petersons had work of their own to return to, but it left Lila feeling more connected to the community. Anna extracted a promise that Lila would join the ladies' circle that met monthly in town, and Eric invited Samuel to bring her to the next community dance in August. Friday, Samuel took Lila into town to buy fabric for a wedding dress. She had brought her best dress from Boston, but Samuel insisted she should have something new if she wanted it. In the dry goods store, Lila found herself drawn to a bolt of ivory silk, simple but elegant. The shopkeeper, Mr. Miller, offered her a good price, and his wife sent over lace trim from their personal stock as a wedding gift. "You should wear it well," Mrs. Miller said warmly. "We are glad Samuel is finally settling down. He has been alone too long." Back at the ranch, Lila spent Friday evening and most of Saturday sewing. She had brought her good sewing kit from Boston, and her mother's training served her well. The dress came together beautifully, with a fitted bodice, modest neckline, and sleeves that ended at her wrists. She added the lace at the collar and cuffs, creating a gown that was both practical and lovely. Saturday evening, Samuel asked her to take a walk with him after supper. They strolled toward the creek, the air cooling rapidly as the sun sank low. Samuel seemed more serious than usual, his hands shoved in his pockets. "I want you to know," he began, then paused as if gathering his thoughts. "I want you to know that I am aware this marriage is not beginning in the usual way. We have known each other barely a week face to face. I do not expect you to have feelings for me beyond perhaps friendship and hope. But I want you to know that I already care about you, Lila. I admire your courage in coming out here, your willingness to work hard, your kindness. I hope that over time, what we have can grow into something deeper." Lila's heart pounded. She stopped walking and turned to face him. "I see care about you too, Samuel. You have been nothing but kind and patient. You make me feel like I matter, like my W words are worth W waiting for. That is a G gift I have rarely been given." Samuel reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, and took her hand. His palm was calloused and warm, and his fingers folded gently around hers. "Then we will build from there. No rush, no pressure. We will take our time and see where it leads." Take our time," Lila echoed with a smile, remembering his first words to her. "Exactly." They stood there by the creek as twilight deepened, hands joined, and Lila felt something she had not felt in years, genuine peace. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever difficulties Montana might throw at them, She believed they could face them together. Sunday dawned bright and beautiful, the kind of perfect summer day that seemed designed for new beginnings. Lila dressed carefully in her new gown, pinning her hair up in an intricate style she had learned from her mother. She tucked a few wildflowers into her hair, their purple and yellow colors bright against the honey blonde. Samuel wore a new black suit, clearly purchased for the occasion, with a white shirt and string tie. He looked handsome and slightly uncomfortable in the formal attire, but his eyes lit up when he saw Lila. "You look beautiful," he said softly. "Why, you look very handsome," she replied, and meant it. They rode to town in the wagon, side by side, arriving at the church to find a small gathering already assembled. Mrs. Murphy had indeed made a cake, a beautiful 3-layer creation that sat on a table near the altar. The Petersons were there with their children, as were Doc Brennan and his wife, Mr. and Mrs. Miller from the dry goods store, Tom and Jack in their Sunday best, and a handful of other townspeople Lila had not yet met. Reverend Matthews, a kindly man in his 60s with white hair and gentle eyes, welcomed them warmly. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. Samuel's voice was steady as he spoke his vows, promising to love and cherish, to provide and protect. Lila's voice trembled slightly with emotion, but she made it through her vows without stumbling too badly, and Samuel's encouraging smile gave her strength. When Reverend Matthews pronounced them husband and wife and told Samuel he could kiss his bride, Samuel leaned down slowly, giving Lila time to prepare herself. The kiss was chaste and brief, but sweet, and the small congregation erupted in applause and cheers. The celebration afterward was joyful and relaxed. Mrs. Murphy served her cake along with lemonade and coffee. People came up to offer congratulations and welcome Lila to the community. Anna Peterson pulled her aside to give her some whispered advice about married life that made Lila blush, and Mrs. Miller pressed a bundle of herbs into her hands with instructions for making a good stew. Jack Riley, emboldened by the festive atmosphere, asked one of the Peterson girls to dance when someone produced a fiddle and struck up a tune. Tom stood by looking amused, and Eric Peterson joined in with a harmonica he pulled from his pocket. Soon the small gathering had turned into an impromptu party, with couples dancing and children running between the benches. Samuel led Lila out for a dance, one hand at her waist, the other holding hers. "I should warn you I am not much of a dancer," he said. "And neither am I," Lila admitted. "Then we are well matched." They moved through the simple steps, occasionally stumbling but laughing when they did. Lila found herself genuinely happy, surrounded by friendly faces and held in her new husband's arms. When she looked up at Samuel, she saw warmth in his eyes, and something that might, given time, grow into the kind of love she had always hoped for. As the afternoon waned and people began to take their leave, Samuel and Lila accepted final congratulations and well wishes. The ride back to the ranch was quiet but companionable, both of them tired from the excitement but content. Tom and Jack had gone ahead to give them privacy, and the sun was beginning its descent when they arrived home. Samuel helped Lila down from the wagon, his hands lingering at her waist. "Welcome home, Mrs. Greene." "Thank you, Mr. G. Greene," she replied with a smile. Inside, Samuel built up the fire despite the summer warmth, creating a cozy glow in the main room. They had brought back leftover cake and some of Mrs. Murphy's fried chicken, and they made a simple supper of it, sitting across from each other at the table. "Are you nervous?" Samuel asked gently. Lila nodded honestly. "A little. We do not have to rush anything," he assured her. "This is our marriage and we get to decide how it goes. If you want to wait, take more time, that is fine." But Lila found that she did not want to wait. She had come to care for Samuel over the past week, and more than that, she trusted him. He had shown her nothing but respect and kindness, had made her feel valued and safe. She reached across the table and took his hand. "I do not want to double you weight," she said, her voice steady despite the stutter. "You are my husband. I want to be your wife in every way." Samuel's eyes darkened with emotion. He stood and came around the table, drawing her to her feet. "Are you sure?" "I am as sure." He leaned down and kissed her, more deeply this time than the chaste kiss at the church. Lila felt heat flood through her body, unfamiliar but not unwelcome. She wrapped her arms around his neck, and Samuel lifted her easily, carrying her toward his bedroom. The night that followed was tender and sweet, full of gentle discoveries and whispered reassurances. Samuel was patient and careful, making sure Lila felt comfortable and cared for. There were moments of awkwardness, as there always are between new lovers, but also moments of surprising connection and growing intimacy. By the time they finally fell asleep, tangled together in Samuel's large bed, Lila felt she had truly begun her new life as Mrs. Samuel Greene. The next weeks settled into a comfortable rhythm. Lila continued learning the ins and outs of ranch life, taking on more responsibilities as her confidence grew. She expanded the garden, adding herbs and more vegetables. She learned to milk the cow, though the animal seemed to sense her nervousness and was not always cooperative. She mastered the cook stove and began experimenting with recipes, delighting the men with pies and roasts and fresh bread. Samuel taught her to shoot, first with a pistol, and then with the Winchester rifle he kept over the door. She proved to be a decent shot, much to Samuel's pleasure and her own surprise. "You have a steady hand," he told her. "That is the most important thing." They fell into the habit of sitting together in the evenings, reading or talking. Sometimes Lila would sew while Samuel worked on leather repairs or sharpened tools, the companionable silence comfortable between them. Other times they would discuss the day, the ranch, their hopes for the future. Samuel encouraged her to talk about her past, her family, her dreams, and he listened with genuine interest, never rushing her when the words came slowly. Physical intimacy became easier and more natural as they grew accustomed to each other. Samuel was an attentive lover, and Lila discovered depths of feeling and pleasure she had not imagined. What had begun as a practical arrangement was blossoming into genuine affection and the first stirrings of real love. August brought scorching heat, and the community dance Eric Peterson had mentioned. Lila wore her green dress and her hair down in curls, and Samuel looked at her as though seeing her for the first time. The dance was held in a large barn on the Peterson ranch, with lanterns hung from the rafters and tables laden with food. The fiddle and harmonica were joined by a guitar, and the music was lively and infectious. Lila danced with Samuel, with Eric Peterson, with Tom Riley, and even with shy Tom Peterson, who blushed furiously when Anna pushed him forward. Between dances, the ladies gathered to talk, and Lila found herself drawn into conversations about recipes and sewing and the challenges of frontier life. Anna Peterson took her under her wing, introducing her to other ranch wives and offering advice freely. "You are doing so well," Anna told her as they watched their husbands attempting a complicated reel. "I can see how happy Samuel is. He smiles more now than I have seen in years." "He makes me happy too," Lila confessed. "That is how it should be," Anna said with satisfaction. "A good marriage is built on friendship and respect as much as passion. You two have a strong foundation." September brought the first hint of cooler weather and a crisis that tested that foundation. One of the cattle became sick, and within days, several others showed similar symptoms. Samuel was beside himself with worry. recognizing the signs of a disease that could decimate the herd if not controlled quickly. He sent for Doc Brennan, who knew as much about animal medicine as human, and they worked together to quarantine the sick animals and treat them with what remedies were available. For 3 days, Samuel barely slept, checking on the cattle around the clock. Lila brought him food and coffee, sat with him during his brief rest periods, and took over managing the ranch as much as she was able. Tom and Jack worked tirelessly, following Samuel's instructions without complaint. It was Lila's first real test of her place on the ranch, and she met it with determination, discovering reserves of strength and capability she had not known she possessed. On the 4th day, the sick cattle began to improve, and no new cases appeared. Samuel stumbled into the house at dawn, exhausted and filthy, and found Lila cooking breakfast. She took one look at him and insisted he eat and then sleep. He was too tired to argue, and after consuming a huge meal, he collapsed onto their bed fully clothed. Lila cleaned him up as best she could without waking him, removed his boots, and covered him with a blanket. Then she went back to her duties, managing the household and coordinating with Tom and Jack to keep the essential work going. Samuel slept for 14 hours straight, and when he finally woke, groggy and disoriented, it was to find Lila sitting in a chair by the bed, mending one of his shirts. "How long was I asleep?" he asked, his voice rough. "All D-Day and into the Eve evening," Lila replied. "It is nearly 9 o'clock. Samuel sat up, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "The cattle are fine. Tom and Jack checked them an hour ago. No new sickness, and the others are continuing to improve." Relief washed over his face, followed by something that looked like wonder. "You have been managing things." "As best I could. The men did most of the W work, but ITR tried to coordinate and keep things running." Samuel reached out and pulled her to him, shirt and mending falling to the floor. "You are amazing, do you know that? I could not have done this without you." Lila felt warmth spread through her chest. "We are partners. That is what partners do." "Yes," Samuel agreed, holding her close. "Yes, we are." October painted the mountains in brilliant golds and reds, and the first serious frost arrived. Samuel and the hired hands began preparing for winter in earnest, making sure all the buildings were sound, stockpiling firewood, and moving the cattle to lower pastures, where they could be more easily tended. Lila preserved vegetables from the garden, canned fruits, and helped butcher hogs that would provide meat through the long, cold months. It was hard, dirty work, but there was satisfaction in seeing the pantry shelves fill, in knowing they were prepared for whatever winter might bring. Lila's hands grew more calloused, her muscles stronger. She no longer felt like a city girl playing at ranch life. She had become a ranch wife in truth, capable and confident. One evening in late October, as they sat by the fire after supper, Samuel turned to her with an expression both nervous and hopeful. "I have been thinking," he began. "This has been a good year, despite the challenges. The herd is healthy, we have had decent rain, and prices are holding steady. I am thinking of expanding in the spring, maybe buying some more breeding stock, improving the barn." That sounds like a good plan," Lila said encouragingly. "It does, but it also means more work, more responsibility. I just want to make sure you are happy here, that this is the life you want. I know it is not easy, and it is certainly not what you knew in Boston." Lila set down her sewing and moved to sit beside him. "Samuel, I am happier here than I have ever been in my life. Yes, the W work is hard, but it is meaningful, and I am not alone. I have you and our friends and a place where I belong. I would not trade that for all the comforts of Boston." Samuel's face lit up. "Truly, Truly. She took a breath, gathering courage for what she wanted to say next. And I have been thinking too. Would like us to have a family, Samuel. When the tea time is right, I would like to have children with you. Samuel pulled her into his arms, his embrace fierce and warm. I would like that too. Very much. They sat together, wrapped in each other and in the quiet joy of shared dreams, while the fire crackled and the Montana wind whispered around the sturdy walls of their home. November brought the first real snow, a light dusting that made the world look magical. Lila stood on the porch, watching fat flakes drift down, and felt a hand slip into hers. Samuel stood beside her, both of them bundled in coats against the chill. Beautiful, is it not? He said softly. Very, Lila agreed. This is just the beginning. By January, we will have drifts taller than you are, and temperatures so cold your breath freezes in your lungs. But there is a beauty to it, a stark majesty you do not find other times of year. I am looking forward to experiencing it, Lila said, and meant it. December arrived with increasing cold and snow that piled higher with each storm. The ranch settled into winter routines. Samuel and the men checking on cattle, breaking ice on water troughs, ensuring the animals had adequate shelter and feed. Lila kept the house warm and welcoming, cooking hearty meals and maintaining a cheerful atmosphere despite the gray days and long nights. Christmas approached, and Lila was determined to make it special. She baked cookies and pies, made a small feast from their stored supplies, and crafted small gifts for Samuel and the hired hands. Samuel surprised her with a beautiful shawl he had purchased in town, soft wool in a deep blue that brought out her eyes. They attended Christmas services in town, the church warm and bright with candles, and celebrated with their neighbors afterward. January of 1883 was as brutal as Samuel had warned, with temperatures plunging below zero and blizzards that lasted days. There were times when they could not see the barn from the house for the blowing snow, and Samuel would tie a rope between the buildings to keep from getting lost, making the necessary trips to tend the animals. Lila worried constantly when he was outside, relief flooding through her each time he stumbled back through the door, snow-covered but safe. During the worst storms, Tom and Jack stayed in the main house rather than trying to make it to the bunkhouse. The five of them, for the cook had to stay as well, played cards and told stories to pass the long hours when outdoor work was impossible. Lila learned more about the hired hands during those enforced days of togetherness. Tom's quiet love for a girl back in Kansas, Jack's dream of having his own ranch someday, the hardships and adventures they had experienced. One particularly fierce night, when the wind howled like a living thing and the house shook with the force of the storm, Lila found herself pressed against Samuel's side in their bed, unable to sleep despite her exhaustion. "Are you frightened?" Samuel asked quietly. "A little," she admitted. "It is so violent, so powerful. It makes me feel very small." "Nature is powerful out here," Samuel agreed, "but we are safe. This house has weathered worse storms than this, and it will weather many more. We just have to trust in the walls we have built and wait it out together." Lila thought about his words, finding deeper meaning in them. Their marriage was like the house, solid, built with care, able to withstand the storms that came. She snuggled closer to her husband, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her ear, and let herself relax. "I love you," she said softly. It was the first time she had spoken the words aloud. Samuel went very still, then tightened his arms around her. "I love you too, Lila, more than I thought possible when I sent that advertisement east. You have made my life so much richer." They kissed in the darkness, tender and sweet, and the howling wind outside seemed to fade away. February brought a brief thaw, and everyone on the ranch emerged from the enforced isolation to assess the damage and begin repairs. They had lost only 3 head of cattle, a remarkable achievement given the severity of the winter. Samuel was pleased but not complacent, already planning improvements for next year. It was in late February that Lila began to suspect she might be pregnant. She had missed her monthly courses, and the smell of coffee in the morning, which she normally loved, suddenly made her nauseous. She said nothing at first, not wanting to raise hopes until she was certain, but by early March, when her symptoms continued and her body began to change in subtle ways, she knew. She chose a quiet evening to tell Samuel, after supper when they were alone by the fire. Her hands were shaking as she set aside her sewing. "Samuel, I have something to tell you." He looked up from the harness he was mending, immediately attentive to the serious note in her voice. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I am fine. Better than fine, actually." She took a breath. "I think I am going to have a baby." Samuel's hands went still. He stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable, and Lila felt a flutter of anxiety. Then his face broke into the widest smile she had ever seen on him. "A baby? Truly? I am fairly certain. All the signs are there. I thought perhaps we could ask Doc Brennan to confirm when we next go to town." Samuel set aside the harness and crossed to her in 2 strides, pulling her up and into his arms. "A baby," he repeated, wonder in his voice. "Lila, this is wonderful news." "The best news." Relief and joy flooded through her. "You are happy." Happy does not begin to cover it. He pulled back to look at her face, his expression tender. "Are you happy? Are you frightened?" "Be both," she admitted. "But am mostly happy. I want this, Samuel. I want our family." They held each other for a long time, savoring the moment and the promise it held. Finally, Samuel insisted she sit down, that she should not be on her feet so much, that he would take over more of the household chores. Lila laughed at his sudden protectiveness, but was touched by it nonetheless. The trip to town the following week confirmed what Lila already knew. Doc Brennan examined her and declared her healthy and about 3 months along, which meant the baby would arrive sometime in September. He gave her advice about diet and rest, warned her about warning signs to watch for, and congratulated them both warmly. News spread quickly through the small community, as news always did. Anna Peterson arrived at the ranch the very next day with baby clothes her children had outgrown and excited chatter about the joys and challenges of motherhood. Mrs. Murphy sent word that she expected to be invited to the christening. Even taciturn, Tom Riley offered awkward but sincere congratulations. As spring arrived and the snow melted, revealing the brown earth and the first tentative hints of green, Lila felt her body changing more dramatically. Her dresses grew tight across the middle, and she let out seams and added panels to accommodate her expanding waist. Samuel was attentive and protective, always ensuring she did not overwork herself, though Lila chafed sometimes at the restrictions. "I am pregnant, not an invalid," she protested one day when he tried to prevent her from lifting a basket of wet laundry. "I know, but I worry," Samuel admitted. "You are precious to me, Lila. You and the baby both. I just want to keep you safe." His sincerity melted her irritation. "I will be careful," she promised. "But I need to stay active to keep busy. It is good for me and the baby." They compromised, Lila maintaining most of her usual activities but accepting help with the heaviest work. Samuel built a rocking chair for the main room, perfectly sized for her, and she spent evening hours there, sewing tiny gowns and blankets, preparing for the new life that would join them. Summer was glorious that year, with abundant rain that kept the pastures green and the cattle fat. Samuel's plans for expansion moved forward, and by July, they had added 50 head to the herd and begun improvements on the barn. The work was hard, but there was an optimism on the ranch, a sense of growth and promise. Lila grew round and ripe as the summer progressed. By August, she moved more slowly, her balance affected by the weight she carried in front. Samuel watched her constantly, his concern visible, but he also looked at her with something very much like reverence, as though she were performing some kind of miracle, which Lila supposed she was. The community dance that August was subdued for Lila, who could no longer dance but enjoyed watching from the sidelines. Anna Peterson sat with her, the two women discussing preparations for the birth. Anna had agreed to help when the time came, having delivered several babies in addition to her own 3 children. "You will do fine," Anna assured her. "You are strong, and Doc Brennan will be there if there are any complications, but I think you will have an easy time of it. You have good hips for bearing children." Lila blushed at the frank assessment, but appreciated Anna's matter-of-fact attitude. The woman had become a true friend over the past months, always ready with advice or assistance, treating Lila's stutter as unremarkable and including her fully in the community of women. September arrived with cooler temperatures and the golden light of approaching autumn. Lila felt heavy and uncomfortable, eager for the baby to arrive. Samuel had moved a cradle into their bedroom, a beautiful piece he had built himself from smooth pine, and they had stocked supplies. Soft cloths for diapers, tiny gowns, receiving blankets, all the necessities their research and Anna's advice had suggested. On a Tuesday morning 2 weeks into September, Lila woke before dawn with a strange cramping sensation in her lower back. She lay still, breathing through it, not wanting to wake Samuel unnecessarily. But when the cramping returned 20 minutes later, stronger this time, she knew. "Samuel," she whispered, touching his shoulder. He was awake instantly, alert in the way of men accustomed to emergencies. "What is wrong?" "And nothing is wrong, but I think the baby is coming." Samuel shot out of bed as though propelled, then forced himself to slow down to think clearly. All right. I will get Tom to ride for Doc Brennan and Anna. You should stay in bed, try to rest while the pains are still mild." Lila nodded, though she felt too excited and nervous to rest. Samuel dressed quickly and hurried out, and she could hear him calling to Tom, urgent but controlled. Within minutes, Tom was galloping toward town and Samuel was back, his hair disheveled and his expression somewhere between thrilled and terrified. "What do you need? What can I do?" Lila could not help but smile at his obvious panic. "Maybe some water. And the bee birthing supplies we prepared, they are in the TR trunk in the corner." Samuel busied himself with the tasks, clearly grateful to have something to do. Jack appeared at the door, awakened by the commotion, and Samuel sent him to heat water and stay ready to help if needed. The house became a flurry of quiet activity as everyone prepared for the impending arrival. Doc Brennan arrived within 2 hours, Anna Peterson with him, both having been roused from their beds by Tom's urgent summons. By then, Lila's contractions were coming regularly, not yet unbearable but definitely uncomfortable. Anna took charge with calm efficiency, sending the men out of the bedroom and examining Lila with experienced hands. "You are progressing well," she pronounced. "I would guess you have several hours yet, but everything looks normal and healthy. Now, let us get you comfortable." The hours that followed were both endless and swift, time taking on a strange quality as Lila's body worked to bring new life into the world. Anna stayed with her constantly, offering encouragement and guidance, while Doc Brennan checked periodically to monitor progress. Samuel was allowed in occasionally, looking haggard and helpless, holding Lila's hand and trying to offer comfort. As afternoon faded toward evening, the contractions became intense, almost overwhelming. Lila found herself crying out despite her attempts to remain quiet, and Anna encouraged her to make noise if it helped. "Let it out," the older woman urged. "There is no shame in it. This is hard work, the hardest work there is." Through the haze of pain and effort, Lila heard Samuel's voice outside the door, talking quietly with Doc Brennan, his concern evident in every word. Knowing he was near gave her strength, and she bore down when Anna told her to, pushed when instructed, and finally, as the sun set and lanterns were lit, she heard the most beautiful sound in the world, her baby's first cry. "A boy," Anna announced triumphantly, placing the squalling infant on Lila's chest. "A perfect, healthy boy." Lila looked down at her son through tears of joy and exhaustion. He was red-faced and wrinkled, waving tiny fists in protest at his sudden arrival into the bright, cold world. But he was perfect, absolutely perfect, with a shock of dark hair and his father's strong features already visible in his newborn face. The door opened, and Samuel came in, his expression anxious until he saw Lila smiling, holding their child. Then his face transformed, joy and wonder erasing the worry. He approached slowly, as though afraid he might disturb something precious and fragile. "A son," Lila said softly, her voice hoarse from her labors. "We have a son, Samuel." Samuel knelt beside the bed, his large, work-roughened hand hovering over the baby before gently touching the tiny head. "He is perfect," he whispered. "You are perfect. Thank you, Lila. Thank you for this gift." Anna finished cleaning up, giving them privacy with their new son. Doc Brennan checked both mother and baby one final time, pronounced them healthy, and departed with instructions for the coming days and a promise to return in a week. Anna stayed to help Lila with the first feeding, showing her how to position the baby, then finally left as well, promising to return the next day. Alone with their son, Samuel and Lila marveled at the tiny person they had created. He had stopped crying once Lila fed him, settling into contented sleep with the absolute trust of the very young. Samuel could not seem to stop touching him, running a finger over the impossibly small hands, the miniature feet, the soft crown of his head. "What should we name him?" Samuel asked. They had discussed names but never quite settled on one. Now, looking at her son, Lila knew exactly what felt right. "I thought maybe Simon Samuel after his father, if you approve." "Simon Samuel Greene," Samuel tested the name. "I like it." "Simon for a first name, and Samuel so he knows he is mine." "He is definitely yours," Lila said with a tired smile. "He has your chin already." As the night deepened and baby Simon slept peacefully in his cradle, Samuel held Lila close, both of them too filled with emotion and awe to sleep, despite their exhaustion. They had begun as strangers brought together by circumstance and necessity, had built a partnership on mutual respect and growing affection, and had found, against all odds, genuine love. Now they were a family, complete and whole, with a future stretching before them full of promise. The weeks after Simon's birth were a blur of sleepless nights and constant feedings, of learning to interpret different cries and mastering the skills of new parenthood. Samuel proved to be a devoted father, taking his turn walking with the baby when Simon was fussy, changing diapers without complaint, and looking at his son with such naked love that it made Lila's heart swell. Anna Peterson was a frequent visitor, bringing meals and advice, holding the baby so Lila could rest. Other neighbors stopped by with gifts and congratulations. A hand-carved rattle from Eric Peterson, knitted booties from Mrs. Miller, a silver spoon from Doc Brennan. The community embraced Simon as one of their own, and Lila felt more connected than ever to this place that had become her true home. As autumn progressed and the air grew crisp, Simon grew and changed, becoming more alert and responsive. His eyes, which had been the indeterminate blue of all newborns, began to show hints of gray that suggested they would be like his father's. He smiled his first real smile at 6 weeks, a toothless grin that melted both parents instantly. October brought the first snow, light and brief, and Samuel began preparing for another winter. This year, though, the preparations felt different to Lila. They were not just ensuring survival, they were protecting their family, their son's future. She helped where she could, one eye always on the cradle where Simon napped, and felt a fierce determination to make this life work, to give her child everything she had not had: security, community, unconditional love. On a quiet November evening, with Simon fed and sleeping peacefully, Samuel and Lila sat together in the rocking chair he had built, her head on his shoulder. The fire crackled softly, casting dancing shadows on the walls. "You ever think about where we were a year ago?" Samuel asked quietly. "You on a stagecoach coming west, me alone on this ranch, both of us hoping for something we could not quite name." "I think about it sometimes," Lila admitted. "I was so frightened that day, worried you would reject me when you heard me speak." "I am grateful every day that you found the courage to come," Samuel said. "You have given me more than I ever dreamed possible: partnership, love, a family, a life worth living." "You gave me the same," Lila replied. "You made me believe I had value, that I was worth waiting for." "That is a gift I will never forget." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to their son's soft breathing, watching the fire burn down to embers. Outside, the Montana wind whispered promises of the winter to come. But inside, all was warm and safe and filled with love. The years that followed brought both challenges and joys. The winter of 1883-84 was milder than the previous one, and the ranch continued to prosper. Simon grew into a sturdy toddler with his father's determination and his mother's gentle heart. Tom Riley married his Kansas sweetheart, who came west to join him, and Jack stayed on as well, eventually becoming foreman when the ranch expanded further. In the spring of 1885, Lila gave birth to a daughter they named Sarah Margaret, a beautiful child with honey-colored hair and gray-blue eyes. Samuel was besotted with his little girl, and Simon took his role as big brother seriously, always wanting to help with the baby. 2 years later, another son arrived, Robert James, completing their family. The ranch house was expanded to accommodate the growing family, with an additional bedroom built on and the main room enlarged. Anna Peterson's children became playmates for the Greene children, and the two families celebrated holidays and milestones together. The community of Dillon grew as well, with more families settling in the area, a new school opening, and the railroad finally reaching the town in 1887. Through it all, Samuel and Lila's love deepened and matured. They weathered droughts and harsh winters, illness and injury, the constant challenges of ranch life and raising children. But they faced everything together, drawing strength from their partnership and the family they had built. Lila's stutter never disappeared entirely, but it became less prominent as her confidence grew. In the accepting environment of Montana, where people valued capability over eloquence, she found her voice in other ways. She became known for her kindness, her skill at cooking and sewing, her willingness to help neighbors in need. She taught Simon, Sarah, and Robert to read from the books on Samuel's shelves, instilling in them a love of learning alongside practical ranching skills. Samuel remained the steady center of their world, hardworking and devoted, his quiet strength a rock they could all depend on. He taught his sons to ride and rope, his daughter to see her own worth and capability. He expanded the ranch carefully and sustainably, always thinking of the legacy he would leave to his children. And every night, no matter how tired he was, he made time for Lila, talking with her, listening to her, cherishing her in the way he had from the very first day. On their 10th wedding anniversary in July of 1892, Samuel surprised Lila with a trip to town, arranged care for the children with Anna Peterson, and took his wife to the hotel for a night alone together, something they had not had since before Simon was born. Over supper in the hotel dining room, the same place they had shared their first meal together a decade earlier, they reminisced about that uncertain beginning. "You remember how nervous we both were?" Samuel asked, his hand covering hers on the table. "I was terrified," Lila admitted with a smile. "I thought for sure you would send me back east." "I considered it," Samuel teased, then laughed at her shocked expression. "I am joking, Lila. I knew from the moment I saw you that you were exactly what I needed, even if I did not fully understand it yet." "You said to take your time," Lila recalled softly. "Those 3W words changed my life. They told me IW was worth waiting for, that I am mattered." "You have always mattered," Samuel said seriously. "You matter more than I can ever fully express. You are my partner, my love, the mother of my children, the heart of our home. I would be lost without you." Lila felt tears prick her eyes, the good kind, born of joy and gratitude. "I love you, Samuel Greene, more every year. And I love you, Lila Greene, more than words can say." They spent that night rediscovering each other, celebrating the love that had grown from tentative beginnings into something deep and unshakable. In the morning, they returned to the ranch and their children, to the life they had built together, to the future they would continue creating side by side. As the years continued to roll forward, the Greene family became a fixture in Dillon, Montana. Simon grew tall and strong like his father, eventually taking over much of the ranch work. Sarah proved to have a quick mind and a talent for numbers, helping her mother with the household accounts and dreaming of becoming a teacher. Robert was the adventurous one, always exploring and getting into good-natured trouble. Samuel's hair turned gray at the temples, and lines deepened around his eyes from years of sun and wind. But he remained strong and capable, the same steady presence he had always been. Lila aged gracefully, her beauty maturing rather than fading, her confidence and self-assurance growing with each passing year. Her stutter remained, but she no longer saw it as a deficiency. It was simply part of who she was, and the people who mattered accepted it without question. On warm summer evenings, they would sit together on the porch, watching their children play in the yard and the sun set over the mountains. Sometimes Simon would bring out his father's old fiddle, having learned to play, and Sarah would sing in a clear, sweet voice. Robert would dance with his mother, making her laugh with his exaggerated movements. In these moments, Lila would look around at the life she had built, at the family she had created with the quiet cowboy who had told her to take her time. She thought about the frightened young woman who had stepped off that stage coach so many years ago, certain she would be rejected, desperate for a place to belong. That woman had found more than she ever dreamed possible: love, family, purpose, and a home that was truly hers. The ranch continued to prosper, expanding its operations and adapting to changing times. As the 19th century gave way to the 20th, new technologies arrived. Better tools, improved breeding techniques, even automobiles that gradually replaced horses for some purposes, though Samuel remained skeptical of the noisy machines. Through all the changes, the core of what they had built remained the same: A family working together, supporting each other, connected to the land and the community around them. When Simon turned 18 in 1901, Samuel and Lila threw a large party, inviting all their friends and neighbors. Anna and Eric Peterson were there, their own children now grown and starting families of their own. Tom Riley came with his wife and their 3 children. Jack, now married as well, brought his family. The celebration lasted well into the evening with music and dancing and abundant food. At one point, Samuel pulled Lila aside, away from the crowd, and they stood together watching the festivities from a slight distance. "We did well," Samuel said quietly. "Look at them, Lila. Look at the life we built, the children we raised, the home we made. We did well." "We did it together," Lila replied, leaning into his side. "That is why it worked." "Take your time," Samuel said suddenly, and Lila looked up at him in surprise. He smiled, that gentle smile she had first seen all those years ago. "I was just remembering the first words I said to you that really mattered. Take your time. I am glad you did, Lila. I am glad we took our time building this, growing together, becoming what we are now." "So am I," Lila whispered. "So am I." As the party continued, and their children laughed with friends and family, Samuel and Lila stood together under the Montana stars, their hands clasped, their hearts full. The mail-order bride and the lonely cowboy had found in each other something precious and rare. True partnership, enduring love, and a happiness that deepened with every passing year. The story could have ended there, a perfect moment frozen in time. But life, real life, continued forward. Sarah went on to become a teacher just as she had dreamed, teaching in the Dillon schoolhouse and eventually marrying a young lawyer who had moved to town. Robert, adventurous to the end, joined the army and saw the world before returning home to settle on a portion of the ranch Samuel deeded to him. And Simon, steady Simon, took over the main ranch operations, marrying a sweet girl from a neighboring ranch and giving Samuel and Lila their first grandchildren. By 1910, Samuel and Lila were grandparents 5 times over, with more grandchildren arriving regularly. They had stepped back from the day-to-day operations of the ranch, but remained active and involved, offering advice and help when needed, but trusting Simon to run things his own way. They had added a small house near the main ranch house, a cozy place just big enough for the 2 of them, where they could have privacy while remaining close to family. One evening in late summer, as they sat on their porch watching the sun paint the sky in brilliant colors, Samuel reached over and took Lila's hand. "You have any regrets?" he asked suddenly. "About coming west, about marrying me, about this life?" Lila turned to look at her husband of 28 years, seeing the boy he had been beneath the man he had become, seeing all the years of love and partnership written in the lines of his face. Her answer came without hesitation, clear and strong despite the stutter that still occasionally marked her speech. "And not a single one," she said firmly. "This life, this family, you, Samuel, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. I would do it all again in a heartbeat." Samuel lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "As would I, my love. As would I." They sat together as darkness fell and the stars emerged, 2 people who had started as strangers and become something far more precious. They had taken their time, building a foundation of respect and friendship that blossomed into deep, abiding love. They had faced challenges and celebrated triumphs, raised children and built a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. The mail-order bride who arrived with a stutter had found her voice in Montana, not by overcoming her impediment, but by finding a place where her worth was measured by her character and capability, rather than her fluency of speech. The cowboy who said, "Take your time," had gained far more than a wife. He had found his true partner, the other half of his soul, the woman who made his house a home and his life complete. As the years continued to pass, Samuel and Lila grew old together with grace and gratitude. They watched their grandchildren grow, celebrated their children's successes, mourned losses when they came, and cherished every ordinary day of the extraordinary life they had built. Their love remained constant through it all, a steady flame that warmed everyone who came near it. In the end, theirs was not a story of grand gestures or dramatic rescues. It was something better, a story of patience and partnership, of two people who took their time building something that would last. It was a story of the American West in all its harsh beauty, of communities forged in adversity, of families carved from wilderness and determination. But more than anything, it was a love story, pure and simple. The mail-order bride and the cowboy, the woman with a stutter and the man who told her to take her time, had found in each other exactly what they needed. And in doing so, they had created something beautiful and enduring that would echo through generations. As the Montana stars wheeled overhead and the wind whispered through the grass, Samuel and Lila sat together in the home they had made, surrounded by the family they had raised, secure in the love they had built, one patient word, one kind gesture, one shared moment at a time. And if the measure of a good life is love freely given and received, laughter shared, and a legacy that endures, then theirs was a very good life indeed, a life that began with three simple words that changed everything. Take your time.